All right, welcome to Jason Sports, Detroit Red Wings. This is draft week. Draft week is always a different bird when we talk about the Detroit Red Wings. Obviously, in years past, you were talking about trying to rebuild the team, get better as we could try to go. You got Lucas Raymond, you got Marco Casper, you got Nate Danielson, you got Axel Sandin Pellica last year. Uh, all is well on the prospect front. Matter of fact, Detroit's ranked, I think, third or second in prospect rankings, depending on where you look. Sometimes they're even number one. And this is goes to what we're talking about. You know, I do believe this is the week to do it. And if you're gonna make a trade, this is obviously the week you're gonna do it. There's gonna be, the draft isn't centrally located no more, especially this year. It's not in one location where all the general managers are gonna convene on that one location and get to talking. And I think that really benefits maybe Yzerman in the slightest because he can kind of stay by himself, call GMs, do what he needs to do to get around it. And I think this is the week that he needs to do it. I think the 13th pick should be in play because when we talk about the 13th pick overall, the last 10 years, you had Luchenko last year, Zach Benson from the Sabres the year before. In 2022, it was Frank Nazar. 2021, it was Canado. In 2020, it was Seth Jarvis, which is a really good one. Spencer Knight in 2019, who is now the Blackhawks. In 2018, is Ty Dellandrea. 2017, Nick Suzuki, who is now the Canadiens captain. Uh, Jamie Bean, which is not Jamie Benn. Hurricanes in 2016, Zerbal in 2015, and Verana in 2014. The reason I bring it up is I'm not asking Yzerman to create water out of wine. I'm not asking him to make a huge move, a huge trade, because honestly, I don't really think there's a huge trade to be out there. I think Nick Hague is obviously out there from the Vegas Golden Knights. That'd be a really good get. We all know that Elias Pettersson's out there. We knew from the fourth period, David Pagnotta had Detroit potentially in talks for Trevor Zegras, which I thought not really a fit. I don't think he's a fit for Todd McLennan's culture and what he wants, but it's an ultimate high upside kind of thing. And if you can get him for pennies on the dollar and you're kind of judging on what you want to do, that would make sense. But here's where the Detroit Red Wings need to really strike while the iron's hot because the 23rd, this 13th pick overall through the last 10 years has not been worth a lot. It has not been worth much at all. When you go look over the 13th overall pick, and then you go talk, listen to draft experts like Jason Bukella, some of the Sportsnet guys, Craig Button, they say like there's like varies from 6 to 12 key guys that you would say you're getting a good value on, and understandably, Detroit's at 13. So if you're a team that is needing a draft pick, or you're trying to shed salary. Obviously, the Red Wings have the salary cap to take on salary, and they can give you something back. And if I was a team like the Golden Knights, or I was a team like the, you know, name a team, I mean, the 13th pick would be in play. Obviously, there's rumors tied to Jason Robertson from the Dallas Stars. Do I believe that? No. But what I did hear from Darren Dreger today, which was very, very interesting, was that the Dallas Stars might try to get involved with Mitch Marner. I think that would be very, very interesting, especially when you talk about Jason Robertson. Do they make the trade to kind of, get rid of the salary? And who else goes with them? Because obviously the Stars are in like a little salary dump kind of, they're in a salary cap kind of hell right now, and they're going to try to keep some of the guys, and they just tied up Mikko Rantanen, so they're kind of spent. And Jason Robertson would be a really good get for the Detroit Red Wings, but I'm not going to sit here and act like that's a foregone conclusion because it's simply not. I think this is going to be a weird year in terms of trades, in terms of how things are going, because the cap is rising, and the cap will rise the next 3 years. We know that for sure. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the Red Wings do. But if I was Yzerman, I would have the 13th pick in play for sure. We went over it earlier in the video. You look over the last 10 picks at the 13th overall pick. There's not many guys that you go, wow, these these guys missed on him. They missed on him. And then the last 3 years or 4 years, you really can't really judge them because some of these prospects are going to take forever. I mean, Seth Jarvis just finally got into a space where he got, and Nick Suzuki, another guy who it took him years to get to where he's at. So it's a very, very interesting, delicate situation. Obviously, if you're the Red Wings, you're not in a situation where you're trying to hoard more prospects because you have a lot of prospects. You have a lot of good prospects. You're trying to get that next evolution of talent. However you can get it, you got to get it. Um, we all know why they went with Andrew Kopp. We all know why they went with JT Compher. We all know why Patrick Kane's going to circle on back, but you need to get a guy to help out that second line. And I think Marco Casper is growing into a role where he could take that second line center role. But you're looking for a winger. You need a scoring winger, and however you get it is the way that it needs to go. But Raymond's entering his prime of his career. DeBrinket's still going to be damn good. Kane's going to be, he's going to be Kane. He's not going to be as fast as he used to be, obviously. But you do hope that he settles in as, a helpful player. He's never going to be a great defensive player. So that's why you got to get better on the back end. And I think the major problem with the back end, even the goalie situation, it's not all on the goalie. It's just defensive breakdowns. And if you think about it like this, Sider is put out against a lot of teams' best players. So if you can get a guy on the second line who could, as a right-hand shot or maybe a left-hand shot, and you can move Edmondson around, Albert Johansson, Sherrod goes the bottom pair, he goes with Johansson. However you do it, this can be salvageable. Because a lot of people they look at this whole situation with Yzerman, they're like, man, there's not much that Yzerman can do with the talent that he has. And I just totally believe that's false. But you have to kind of, if you're Yzerman, this is a week to strike because there's going to be players that are going to be available, and you got to get while the iron's hot. And you can't just sit there and think about the prospects, because this 13th overall pick, it doesn't help you in the slightest bit. If this was the 7th or the 6th or the 5th or the 8th or the 9th, I could be like, yeah, let's keep the pick. But it's the 13th overall pick, and if you look at any kind of guy who's a draft expert in the NHL, they all say the same thing. It's 6 to 12. That's the range in which you're going to get a good player. You're not going to get a good player. That's what all of the good draft experts say. And are they always right? Absolutely not. But you usually see some in the middle. And if it's 9, if it's 10, if it's 11, if it's 12, I mean, you're still outside that range. So you could still get a good player at 13. But again, the Red Wings are not in a situation where they're trying to hoard more prospects. They need to get better now. They have the prospects to be good. They don't have to sit there and wait for, they don't want to wait for this guy to come up in like 2029, 2030. That doesn't make much sense for the Detroit Red Wings. So Yzerman's got a big week ahead of him. And I think that if there was a week that you can make a huge move, a sizable move, I'm not looking for him to trade for Connor McDavid. I'm not looking for him to trade for some, top tier player, because if it's a top tier player, how often do those guys get to the open market, and how often do they get traded? You see what I'm trying to say? So yes, I want them to make a move, but I want Yzerman to make the right move, because what we've seen from Yzerman over the past couple of years has been, look, we're going to go get this guy, JT Compher. We're going to go get this guy, Andrew Kopp. And they're great players, but they're overvalued in their position, overvalued in their salary. They're good players. I mean, I went over the advanced stats on my page, the Red Alert podcast page, and Andrew Kopp had a really decent year. The problem is, and people were saying it all over the place, and I totally agree with them, his salary doesn't match his production. Now, he didn't play off 82 games. He got hurt, and when he got hurt, you've seen a drop off in the way that this team played. But I definitely think this is a week that Yzerman can go make that trade for with the 13th overall pick. A team is going to think that's a really good value. Even though this is not the draft for it, some team is going to be like, okay, we're just trying to get rid of this player no matter what, or we're trying to get some salary relief so we can go do this. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. The Rangers are doing the same thing because they might get Gavrikov, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens this offseason. Obviously, the Red Wings should be in contention for every little thing, but I'm not going to sit here and whine if there's some things that don't go their way. Now, I'll do my mock off season tomorrow. So if you're on this YouTube, you're gonna get it. So subscribe, and then I'll give it to you tomorrow. But I wanted Mason Marchment. I thought that was a good deal that Seattle got for Mason Marchment. And a guy like Zegras, I'm not really a fan of. I didn't really want Zegras, but there's players to be had out there. I would love a Nicholas Hague. I would love an Aaron Ekblad. I think they would do wonders for this defense. I think this defense badly needs an infusion of talent to help out Edvinsson and Sider and Johansson. We'll see what happens. But if I was the Yzerman, that 13th pick would definitely be in play for the Detroit Red Wings. I want to hear what you want to think. Do you think the 13th overall pick should be in play for any type of trade? Let me know below in the comments, and we'll talk about it in the comments. I'll definitely respond to your comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.